Hi again. Continuing the series on military aviation. The book I'm going to talk about today is this one, Wings on My Sleeve by Captain Eric Winkle Brown. Now, it refers to the fact that naval pilots wear their wings on the sleeve rather than on the chest. And Captain Brown was a Fleet Air Arm pilot. Before World War II, he studied German and was in school in Germany and was also intensely interested in flying. And he met a lot of very, very prominent Luftwaffe officers at various flying functions in the couple of years before World War II. And he was actually at school when war broke out, and he was arrested by the Gestapo, who held him for a couple of days and then took him to the Swiss frontier, and he was repatriated. Whereupon he came back to the UK and joined the Fleet Air Arm, which is naval aviation. And one of the things he started doing, or what the Navy started doing, was making what became called Woolworth carriers. Because we were very, very short of proper aircraft carriers, they converted cargo ships by putting a flight deck over the hold, over the decks, and experimenting with landing aircraft on them in various ways. And then they were doing it operationally. And Captain Brown was involved in the testing and also then using these carriers to escort convoys across the Atlantic, which was obviously the vital element in the Battle of the Atlantic. And they used to fly up and try and attack the German courier aircraft, the Focke-Wulf Courier, which was big four-engined aircraft, or attack U-boats. And during this, he was torpedoed. The ship, he was almost torpedoed and spent time in the water and so on. Had some successes shooting down enemy aircraft. He developed the head-on approach, that the FW Courier was pretty invulnerable from flank attack, but if you took it head-on, there was a lot of glass at the front of the crew compartment, that had a better chance of doing the job. He went in to a lot of testing of aircraft, particularly for carrier landings, different types. This was quite hairy business, because some of the aircraft, they were RAF aircraft, for example, the Hurricane and so on, and the Mosquito. And they would they weren't designed for carrier use. The undercarriage, wasn't designed to take the hard landing onto a carrier, and they would just attach an arrestor hook, and sometimes the whole tail would pull off when the aircraft hit the arrestor wire. So it was hairy business. He was the first to land a Mosquito aboard a ship. So we continued all this throughout the war. Then at the end of the war, towards the latter end of the war, he was working at Farnborough, Royal Aircraft Establishment of Farnborough. They had this special trials unit, and they were testing all sorts of things. And he was he was the naval participant in the very, very secret tests of the jet, the Gloucester jet, which had been developed by Frank Whittle. And he would fly it, and sometimes he couldn't make it back to the home base airfield, so he'd have to land it somewhere else due to weather or the fuel blockage or whatever. And this was in about 43, 44, and no one was aware of jet aircraft. So this aircraft with no propeller, flown by a Royal Navy chap, would land without warning, and he was almost arrested sometimes. He thought he was going maybe from outer space or something. One of the things that he did was at the end of the war, there was a tremendous interest in German aviation. Now, in a lot of ways, the Germans had led the pack. They developed some terrific types, particularly in the jets, and they had several operational jet aircraft. Luckily for us, Hitler and some of the other top Nazis had poked their noses in and had insisted on design features which hindered the development of the types. So even though they were pretty advanced, they they could have been more advanced if it wasn't for Hitler's interference. So Captain Brown went off to Germany, where his knowledge of German was a terrific advantage, and he worked with the scientists, the air crews, and the mechanics, and he was able to fly many types of jet aircraft and rocket aircraft. And it's all in the book, and he holds the world record for different types of aircraft flown. So it's amazing. And he also gives his list of his top 20 aircraft. The number one is the Avro Lancaster, by the way. So that's all interesting to see. Well, one of the aircraft he tested in Germany was a Dornier 335, which was it was a propeller aircraft, but it had two propellers, one in the nose and one at the tail, which is strange. But it had an ejection seat. But to eject, it was a tremendous sequence, and it involved ejecting the canopy by pulling down on a bar. And what tended to happen was, as soon as the bar cammed the canopy open, the speed of the air ripped the canopy, and the pilot was still holding the bar, and his arms would be ripped off. And this happened several times. Pilots lost their arms before they had a chance to eject. So, a little bit of a design flaw there. The actual aircraft, he said, was pretty good. So he tested all these different types of aircraft. Another interesting story in the book, and this really is fascinating, is he was told that there was like a flying saucer flying over the water. So he went up to have a look at it in a Vampire jet, and he said, I couldn't identify. I climbed to about 40,000 feet, but the shape was still above me. Now, 40,000 feet is very high, particularly in those days. Moving fairly fast, and I could not identify it, but I'm certain it was not a cosmic research balloon. Now, just to put this into context, when these unidentified flying objects, and the key phrase is unidentified, or the key word is unidentified, they're often explained as being meteorological phenomenon, weather balloons, or the planet Venus. Now, being an experienced pilot, he could he could dismiss all of those. He knew what the planets looked like. He knew what meteorological phenomena were, etc. Then the other explanation people give is some sort of advanced research aircraft. Now, Captain Brown was right at the forefront of research. He'd flown all the cutting-edge prototypes, developed. Britain was a very leading country in aviation development at the time. We had developed a jet before the United States had, for example. The United States were putting a lot of research into aviation, and the Germans had a lot. And he was familiar with it all. He's flying all the prototypes. He knew what was on the drawing boards and so on. So he knew it wasn't any of that kind of thing. So it's just a fascinating story. I've got no opinion one way or the other, but it's just to to tell it as it happened. Great book, fascinating story. Again, very modest chap, as most of these pilots seem to be. And, as I say, he flew more types of aircraft than anyone else. And he died a few years ago, unfortunately, but he certainly lived his life to the full.